Well, hello, my vivacious acolytes. Inquisitor Nero here, and...
Hello, boys! I'm back!
Apologies for my absence. The opening summer months are a bit wild on my end, and things on my IRL job have been a little busy, which has kept my hand at bay from crafting videos for the channel. Hopefully, with the amazing growth we've experienced here, that can change. Patreon and support links below. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So, on this glorious return, I wanted to do something special apart from my 5 Minutes of Heresy series. But what? Well, a rather interesting opportunity landed. Zach Castigoon Miniatures, Lord of the Grimdark Compendium, decided to hold a Grimdark Horus Heresy painting challenge.
Man, I'm gonna have some fun with this.
Now, if you are unfamiliar with his channel and website, I will include them in the description below. His work and his retinue of artists under his banner are an invaluable resource for those getting into this style of miniature painting. However, on my end, there was one issue with the contest. I only had less than a week to get my submission finished because the band Deadcheck had contracted me to do some video work for their upcoming Zenithius EP. But I like a good challenge, and there was no way I was going to miss this. Luckily, I had just the thing. Prior to starting my 5 Minutes of Heresy series, I had begun work on a kill team of Dark Brotherhood Blackshields converted from the Series 3 Plague Marines. Boy, that's a mouthful. Basically, the idea was to take a Plague Marine model, true scale it, cut off the nurgly and mutated bits, and resculpt the armor so it looked like a Heresy-era Space Marine. Now, I shelved that project temporarily because all that work on just a single Plague Marine is soul-destroying. It takes forever.
Forever.
But I did finish this test model, and it seemed like the perfect candidate for the contest. Alright, looking at him closely, you can see that I used a Plague Marine body, backpack, and shoulder pauldrons, a really old Space Marine beaky helmet from this ancient box of relics, with the arms and weapons being sourced from the Horus Heresy Dark Angels Interrupter kit, which I got through Egghead Miniatures. By the way, I'm going to shill them just for a little bit. I have no business connection with them, but I just want to say that they are a great resource for bits, especially from Forge World. I will link Egghead Miniatures' website below. In addition, I added some feathers to the belt. Obviously, this guy is an ex-Raven Guard legionary, which were sourced from a Warcry Corvus Cabal mini that I'm using for something else. I also added some Space Marine and Necromunda ammo packs to fill out the belt. I wanted this guy to look like he is armed to the teeth. Plus, it covers up some of the more janky areas of my green stuffing skills. I know it's a lot that goes into this model, but if you can tough it out, it's worth the effort. Now, this is, after all, a painting contest, which can be a bit nerve-wracking. As a society addicted to social media apps, we have an awful habit of judging ourselves and what we're capable of against that of others. This can be especially salient in painting competitions. You see loads of great work being submitted, but you look at your own submission and you could easily get demoralized. So, to combat this, here are Nero's 3 tips for competing in painting competitions. Not the best title, but I digress. Number 1, only challenge yourself. What I mean by that is only compete against your current skill level. Try to raise the bar of your work. Don't go head-to-head against the work of others. This way you avoid getting burned out and discouraged. Always aim for the top of your game. You know where you struggle, so try to raise the bar there. Second point, get outside your comfort zone. Do something different. Try different techniques. Honestly, a painting competition is the best place to do this. Often we can become stuck in a very formulaic approach to miniature painting when knocking out our armies and warbands. In competitions, all bets are off. Be bold. Take risks. You'll fail for sure, but you'll learn a ton of new tricks in the process. Third thing, have fun. Sounds like a no-brainer when competing, but we can often lose sight of this. Enjoy the ride, relish in your victories, and learn from your shortcomings. Miniature painting should be fun, not a chore. Remember why you're in this hobby to begin with, and immerse yourself in your work. Competitions don't need to be stressful. Also, never anticipate you'll win, like ever. When I started this competition, one of the first submissions I saw literally made me say, that's gonna win. But I still entered because in the last Grimdark Compendium painting challenge I competed in, I painted my favorite model to date, the mighty Centurion. I'm using him as a Chaos Space Marine in my Blackstone Fortress games. While he didn't win the last challenge, I am so damn proud of this mini, and I consider this piece to be near the top of my skill level. So I wanted to replicate that with this challenge. Something to keep in mind in any contest that has judges, is that contest is subjective. What you like, a judge may not. It is a subjective ranking system. Now, in no way is this criticizing the judges in the Grimdark Compendium competition. They are at the top of their game, but they might have different opinions than you or I of what makes a winning submission piece. You getting first or second place might boil down to someone's personal taste of what they look for in a miniature, which is their right, as it is their competition. That's not a bad thing either. It's an opportunity for growth and to learn, especially if you can get feedback. It doesn't mean you have a bad submission piece. If you have fun and are able to increase your skill level, you've already won. Right, let's be fearless, bold, and take some risks. Something I've always wanted to try, but have been too much of a sissy little to attempt was the art of pre-weathering. This is the application of materials to parts of the miniature to create texture, be it cracks in the armor, dirt, grime, corrosion, rust, or battle damage. In preparation for this project, I watched Alessandro of Dark Ages Workshop's latest 3-part tutorial series. Also an artist of the Grimdark Compendium. He's an amazing content creator and awesome dude with a very unique style and approach to his work, which I like. I'll link his YouTube channel below. Please, please, please give him a follow. His latest tutorial series really inspired me to give this pre-weathering technique a shot, and I'm so happy I did. It has opened up a whole new range of painting possibilities that I want to try in future projects. Thanks for the push, Dark Ages. First thing I had to do was bring my liquid green stuff back to life. I accomplished this through a combination of adding water, some Vallejo airbrush thinner, and a little bit of good old-fashioned necromancy. I don't know what it is with this stuff, but these pots seem to dry out just real quick, so in the future I think I'll be shopping around for a different product. With the dead successfully resurrected, I gathered up the saddest brushes I could find, along with 2 pots of Grelin Earth and Astro Granite debris. These 3 products are going to serve as our prime tools for the pre-weathering process. If you've ever been to a historical war museum or seen military vehicles up close, you'll notice that armor plating actually has this kind of texture to it. So the liquid green stuff is going to be what we're going to use to try and achieve that effect, breaking up the smoother plastic surfaces on the miniature. The crackling effect that we get from the Grelin Earth is going to mimic battle damage in the armor plating. I like to build this effect up over many different layers, shocking each layer as I go with some heat from a hairdryer. I typically hold the hairdryer about 6 or 7 inches away from the miniature, using a back and forth motion with my hand so as not to melt the miniature because that would be terrible. Lastly, the Astro Granite debris is going to be used to simulate dirt and the buildup of other decayed elements on the tabard and armor. I'm mostly going to use this on the tabard, but I'll use some around the feet of the miniature as well. The key is to be asymmetrical in your application. Don't create patterns. Be random. Put yourself in the shoes of the Marine. As scary as a thought as that might be. With the pre-weathering complete, this is what we got. Now, I know the model looks like hell on earth, but we have to trust the process. So, having thrown some black primer on the model and adding a basic zenithal highlight, this is what we are left with. Honestly, I love this stage of painting. It's the first look at your model as one cohesive piece rather than a collection of parts. You can see how it's supposed to look even at this monochrome stage. Before we continue further, here is my reference photo of a Legionnaire from the Blackshield cabal known as the Dark Brotherhood, taken from the Horus Heresy Black books. I'll talk about the lore of the faction later, but for now I want to focus on what I consider to be the most important parts of the color scheme. The obvious one is the white helmet. We need to nail that as it will be the focal point of the miniature. Nothing is ever pure white, or black for that matter, so we're going to have to add some character to it, aiming for a ghostly, grim white color. Similarly, the next important part of the model is the black armor, which in this photo has a weird purpley hue to it, which I'm definitely going to capitalize on. Lastly, we have his tabard, which has seen better days. I want this to be a warmer tone than what we've already discussed, which should add some nice contrast to the cooler tones of the black armor and the white helmet. I also wanted to base the miniature in warmer colors as well, so the tabard will be a nice way to help tie the miniature into the environment. So, let's get to it. I took some Black Templar contrast paint and thinned it down with about 3 parts contrast medium and a little bit of water. I applied this mix to the entirety of the miniature, pushing it into the recesses of the armor. This served to help better define the shadows and to really help some of the details on the model just really pop. It's a neat little trick that I like to use with the zenithal highlight. The contrast paint also does a great job of knocking back those gray tones so that we could better achieve that purpley black armor color that we're going for. I even push this effect further with some Nuln Oil, because why not? The important thing to remember with these steps is that you are using your brush to drag the pigment of the paints into the recessed areas of the model. Next, I started to introduce the colder tones that would act as the foundation to the base of the armor. I did this by mixing 3 parts of Vallejo's Dark Mediterranean Blue from their model Airline with 1 part of Vallejo's Neutral Gray from their model Color line. Using a dry brush, this mix was then stippled all over the miniature, focusing on the parts of the armor that would catch the most light. This process was then repeated with 3 parts of the Dark Mediterranean Blue from before, and 1 part of Vallejo's medium sea gray. This secondary mix was only stippled on the uppermost highlighted areas of the miniature. I know this sounds like a lot of work, but I wanted to get all the heavy lifting out of the way so it was smooth sailing when I applied the washes. First on deck for the washes was the Citadel shade Druchii, yeah, let's go with that, Druchii Violet. Using a large brush, I thinned the shade down with some water on my wet palette and applied the mix to the entirety of the miniature, save for the plasma weapon and the helmet. As with our base coats, we're going to want to build these wash coats up slowly, allowing plenty of dry time between layers. Remember, we're enjoying the process, no need to get overzealous. After the shade had completely dried, I came back with the Mediterranean sea gray mix from before to repop some of those gray highlights. Now, admittedly, this step could be considered overkill, but at the time of recording, I wanted to be safe rather than sorry. I followed this up with an all-over wash of Black Templar contrast paint, thinned down with some water. Then back to our thin shade of Druchii Violet, another pop of the gray highlights with our sea gray mix, back to a thinned down Druchii Violet and water, and back to the Nuln Oil from before. I know, it's a lot, but remember, you can do as much or as little of this as you want. This was just my process. The key is to trust your instincts and know when to move on to the next part. Now that we could finally move on to the helmet, I built up a nice base coat using ash gray from Army Painter. When working with white and off-white colors, it's important to work in thin layers of paint. Be methodical and take your time. I followed this up with a 50-50 glaze of ash gray and Army Painter's matte white to further help build up the color gradient on the helmet. I finished this color gradient by stippling on some pure matte white, as you can see here. Now for the fun part. Using a thinned down mix of Colia green shade with water, I did an all-over glaze on the helmet. This gave us an eerie, ghostly green hue to our gray-white gradient. Using Colia green shade in conjunction with pale colors like this is a common trick in the Grimdark painting sphere. And for good measure, the results are fantastic. At this point, it was all about laying down the rest of the base coats, such as the silver for the trim and the studs of the armor, some bronze for the copper areas of the backpack, and an assortment of other colors for the rest of the doodads this Marine is rocking up with. If you're painting your own Dark Brotherhood Marines, this part is up to your discretion. Dealer's choice, my dear acolytes. While I slugged through base coating, I want to take a moment to speak about this faction of Blackshields and provide some insight into their history, origin, and place within the Horus Heresy. As mentioned before, this model is a Blackshield of the Dark Brotherhood. For those new to the Horus Heresy setting, Blackshields are a catch-all term for Legionis Astartes that have deserted their parent legion and or refused to take a particular side during the Horus Heresy. Understand that whole groups of loyalist Marines were of traitor legions, and vice versa. With a civil war that consumed the entire Imperium of Man, information about who was on whose side was hard to make sense of. Reliable information is often the first casualty of war. Thus, groups of Space Marines so used to fighting alongside their cousins of other legions were left to their own devices, giving rise to the Blackshields. This term was partially given to these groups due to the fact that the Black Shield Legionnaires would often remove their old heraldry and iconography while adopting to paint their armor black while adding new heraldry, depending on the group. The black armor wasn't always the case with these guys, but as a rule of thumb, as a hobbyist in the heresy setting, no matter which Black Shield group you paint, it is wise to stick to dark colors. Yeah, they could have splashes of brighter colors in their color scheme, say if they were an Imperial Fist or Emperor's Children Marine. However, their armor should look worn, somber, with an overall dark color tone. Remember that Space Marines of this time period, most of whom were inducted into the Legions at adolescence, only knew life as a Legionnaire. For a Marine to forsake their Legion, or vice versa, was a very sobering act. The dark armor these guys wore is a reflection of this, and the sorrow and loss they must have felt. I've also seen accounts of their black armor described as an act of mourning of what could have been, or what the Legions could have accomplished had civil war not broken out in the Imperium.
I gotta tell you, it was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
Before we get too deep into the lore, let's check back to see how the model's looking. Ha, very nice. Now, it may not seem like it, but we are close to completion. At this stage, we'll be using a combination of enamel washes, some oil paints, and specialty products like Dirty Down Rust, and an enamel black panel lining product from Tamiya to aid with the weathering effects. I'll also be using a couple different brighter metallic colors to create broken highlights on the weathered parts of the metallic armor. This will also create visual interest and help repop these weathered areas of the armor. This is actually my favorite stage of painting. You can be really creative, and it's pretty low stress as most of these products I'm using can easily be cleaned off with mineral spirits in case you get too carried away. I'll of course show this process in the background as we continue our lore dive into the Dark Brotherhood. Within the Horus Heresy setting, the Dark Brotherhood first appeared in an area of space known as the Eridian Cataract. This region of space is located in the galactic southeast near the Pale Stars just south of the Badab sector in Maelstrom Zone, as shown on this map from the Badab War Imperial Armor box set. Big flex, I know. The Dark Brotherhood themselves were led by an enigmatic figure known as the Nemean Reaver, or Nemean for short. The Nemean is believed to be a Dark Angel veteran of the 3rd Rangdan Xenocides. This was part of a horrendous war against an enemy so terrifying that almost all information about the conflict has been redacted by Imperial authorities. We don't even know what the Rangdan looked like. We do know that the Dark Angel suffered terrible losses during this conflict. So much so that after the Xenocides had ended, the Legion never recovered to its full strength before the Horus Heresy broke out. The Nemean's face is said to be horribly scarred and disfigured as a mark of this conflict. The guy even wields a specially crafted flambard sword.
Oh! You are such a badass!
Yeah, this guy hard as f***. An interesting note about the Eridian Cataract is that it is a trinary star system, and that the area of space it encompasses is extremely hard to navigate. But not if you're the Dark Brotherhood, who not only had ships capable of doing so, but also void-born crews of both baseline humans and Astartes that could accomplish such a feat. Upon the Dark Brotherhood's arrival, they declared the Eridian Cataract as their own personal fiefdom under their protection, which I imagine looked something like this. Well, the War Master Horus had other plans and dispatched the Alpha Legion to subjugate the region. While the Imperial worlds within the Trinary star system folded like a wet rag, the Dark Brotherhood said, "How about no?" and proceeded to mercilessly wreck the 20th Legion, setting ambushes and traps that Alpha Legion, the Legion known for ambushes, traps, and subterfuge, walked right into. Get this, they even baited Alpha Legion into deploying 10,000 troops to an irradiated planet on the notion that the Dark Brotherhood would be there, which ended up being a ruse. What was the result of this operation? Well, all 10,000 troops died of radiation poisoning and exposure. Eventually, the Nemean Reaver was contacted by none other than Horus Heresy badass Nathaniel Garrow of Malkador's Knights Errant, who persuaded the mysterious Blackshield to join his ranks. So, if you follow the journey of the Knights Errant, you'll find that they became the forerunners of the 40k faction known as the Grey Knights. Before leaving his Blackshield cabal, the Nemean told the Dark Brotherhood that he would support any action the warband took. From that point, the Blackshields went on the offensive and continued to beat Alpha Legion like a 2-year-old in a Tyson fight, driving deep into Alpha Legion-controlled space before mysteriously disappearing. The text around their lore says, quote, "They disappeared not seen for an age," which implies they resurfaced at some point in the 40k timeline. While this isn't confirmed, I personally like to believe that they eventually found their way to the Ghoul Stars and have been active in that area since. Maybe they're continuing to beat the enemies of the Imperium senseless in the foul reaches of the void. Okay, the miniature is done and looking excellent. With my hobby desk in utter ruins and less than a day before the contest ends, I needed to do something cool for the base. While the Dark Brotherhood were often seen fighting in the void in narrow corridors of warring space vessels, I wanted to do something different. So I got to thinking about the Eridian Cataract, which, during the editing of this video, I realized I was pronouncing wrong. And because my script spelling abilities are trash, and this video took a millennia to get done, I didn't feel like redoing the voiceover. Forgive me, humble viewer. Anyway, the Eridane Cataract is said to be full of asteroids and mineral-rich moons. While looking for inspiration, I stumbled across some photos of the Black Desert, which looks like something out of a sci-fi novel. I don't know anything more about the Black Desert other than it's a place that exists. This video is long enough, and I'll have to do some further research into this weird place when I'm not up against the proverbial clock. However, the Black Desert does look like it would fit within the Eridane Cataract, with its mineral-rich resources being guarded by a group of Blackshields to use against their enemies.
I know! You construct a weapon, look around you. Can you form some sort of rudimentary lathe?
Now, I will go into the basing process in a future installment in this Dark Brotherhood series. While the end product turned out well, I still need to do some experimentation to get it to the bar I've set for a video tutorial. Something to look forward to in the future. With the miniature done and 1 hour remaining on the clock, let's see how he turned out. I am so pleased with the end result, and I believe that this is near the top of my painting abilities. Every goal I set for myself during the competition I accomplished, and even better, I'm now motivated to finish the rest of the warband, which is a fantastic feeling. Now, he did not win the Grimdark Compendium challenge, but that's okay. Actually, the submission I thought was going to win won. Called it. Overall, there were a lot of fantastic entries, and I walked away from the contest with a new favorite miniature for my collection. Plus, I got to make this video ranting about Blackshields in weird places like the Black Desert. I do sincerely hope you enjoyed this journey, and I hope that these Dark Brotherhood lads get some more love and attention, especially in the newest edition of the Horus Heresy. GW, if you're listening, we want Blackshields. Again, huge shout out to Zach Castigoon Miniatures of the Grimdark Compendium, Alessandro from Dark Ages Workshop, Egghead Miniatures, and the band Deadcheck for letting me use their latest single, Titanforge, for the ending showcase song. Before I end this vox-log, I want to thank you, the viewer. We recently passed 150 subs on YouTube, and I got my first Patreon and Subscribestar supporters. Over on Patreon, huge shout out to Argyris, and over on Subscribestar, huge shout out to user 89D82003. Must be a Martian tech priest. Big thanks for deciding to support my work. Seriously, your generosity is both humbling and absolutely amazing. Thank you. Remember to be sure to share this video, sub to the channel, like and comment below with your thoughts on the fearsome Dark Brotherhood and what you want to see next. Well, my dear acolytes, I'm Inquisitor Nero. Godspeed on your journey into the Grim Dark.